Hi, and you're very welcome to episode 31 of season 5 of the League of Ireland Women's Podcast here on finalwhistle.ie with myself, Breifne and Aaron, and as always, with Aaron Clark to join me. We're going to be talking all things women's football for the next hour or so. Of course, Shell's Athlone, big game of last weekend, that went in the favour of the defending champions, and Athlone look to have the league all but wrapped up now. 3 games to get effectively 2 points. They face Cork on Wednesday. They could do the job in Turner's Cross on Wednesday evening. Shells will be left licking their wounds. Big news tonight. I suppose Aaron's going to tell us a bit more about this later on, but Sean Russell has been announced as having departed Treaty after their 6-0 defeat at the weekend at the hands of Peamount United in the Markets Field. Might not necessarily be down to that game. We'll talk about that whole situation. Things seem to be going a little bit pear-shaped for Treaty in the last couple of months or so, both on the men's and the women's side. We'll talk about the impact that's going to have on the women's league and the team down there. And then it's really just looking back over the weekend's action ahead of the next international break that comes up. You might have a few words to say about the international manager, Aaron. I know you had plenty to say on Twitter the other evening, and it's kind of blown up for you. We'll chat about Carla Ward and her impact on or maybe lack of impact on the league over the last 8 or 9 months in the role. So, Aaron, where were you at the weekend? What were you up to?
I was off at gallivanting at other sports yesterday, seeing how others tend to do it. But I was at the big game on Saturday. I was at the big game on Saturday, and got to enjoy Shells against Athlone. Watched a lot of other bits of games as well the weekend. But I was in Talca Park. Do you know what? It's mad because the season is winding down, and it's like there's not many more shows left. You said episode 31. I started like, how have we done 31 podcasts this season? And it's mad. And you think the sheer number of podcasts compared to we're only on game 20 or 21, and it's like when you look back, it takes an awful lot of things.
6 rounds of the All Ireland Cup in there as well. Don't forget, and a couple of international games. We had a few bonus episodes too with the Champions League.
It's mad. It's mad. Like when you just think about it, and still a couple of busy weeks. Granted, the league might be just about over, but still got that cup game, and that cup final in Talon. As I say, the internationals. It's still a bit to go, and season never really dies down until that last game is played. And listen, looking forward to talking about the weekend's games. There was some interesting high points across the board, some interesting low points. And I know you want to talk about Izzy Walsh's goal for Waterford at the weekend. You just have this bloody knack, and I'm sick of. I don't want to say this, but I have to say, you just have this knack of texting me about people, and then all of a sudden, just go and do something.
If you've got it, you've got it, man.
It's Fletchini at the start of the season, and then all of a sudden, it's Izzy Walsh the last 2 weeks, and it's like, what am I going to get next week out of him? That's the question. Might go have to see, will someone take a bet of someone who's going to score this week, whoever Breifne suggests.
To be fair, it's not difficult. It just takes some watching the games, and it's watching teams I haven't seen before and seeing somebody do something a little bit special. And I think the run that Izzy Walsh did 7 days or 10 days ago now, I suppose, last week, about 5-6 minutes before she actually scored the first goal for the club down in Waterford, was impressive. And I was just like going, oh, this girl has a little bit something about her. And she scored 2 goals. She set herself up for the goal this week. I've never seen somebody header the ball to themselves for a header for a goal. That's a new one on me. Never seen it before. So she's I think she's one for the future. She's only 15 or 16. She's very young. She might be slightly older than that, but impressive. Let's talk Athlone and Shells though, because for me, I think that's job done for Athlone. They've 2 points to get to secure the title.
3. They actually need 3 now, because
you're correct. I can't do maths. Yeah,
because especially with the league now not being decided on head to head this year.
Yeah,
they would need
Shells have the advantage. On
the thing about it, it reminds you so much of, and I hate to say it, and you're going to tell me I shouldn't be saying it. But it reminds me of that Peamount one a couple of years ago where they needed 1 win out of their last 3 games. I don't necessarily think this Athlone team was going to blow it. I would expect them to get it done on the first hurdle. But in terms of Saturday, before we even talk about the on the field, I said to you a couple of weeks ago, I said, in order for Shells to really, really push to win this game, I said we need to see a massive Shells crowd of about 1,500. It was 602 fans, and 603 was the attendance. was less than the attendance of when Shells played Rovers in the cup game. You look across the road to the noisy neighbours in Bowes. Bowes get 600 most home games, and it's for such a big game, such a magnitude of it. It's so disappointing to see such a poor crowd and what could have been. I know Shells did try to do a few things. They had a dogs where they had a load of people had brought in some dogs into the ground, and people got up to pet them. I know Mackenzie Anthony loved that because she's a massive dog fan, and like it was they tried to do stuff, but it just doesn't seem to be working for them. And then on the pitch, they probably should go 1-0 up after what 3-4 minutes.
Sorry, I got cut off there for a second.
Larry has the ball in the net, gives offside from a free kick from Leah Doyle. I watched it back myself. Tony O'Donoghue and Darrell Garrity, three was sitting hovering around the laptop and watching the replay, and none of us could see where the offside had come from. And it was one of them that it was sort of that sort of moment, and you look back at it and you think Shells against Athlone in Athlone, Mackenzie Anthony had the goal that wasn't given, that was ruled out as offside, and then from there, I thought Shells were decent. I thought Shells were quite good. I thought they were, they'd created chances. They sort of stifled a lot of what Athlone were trying to do. But then when Athlone take the leads, just almost on half time from Hannah Waish, she should never be scoring. She should never be allowed to score that ball. That ball is allowed to bounce. I know if people watch back on the highlights as well, you'll probably see about 10 or 12 minutes earlier, Shauna Brennan played a similar type of ball and it was allowed to bounce, but it ran out wide. And like for that sort of curling looping ball and left footed ball in, and it's when it bounces like that, Shells have to be defending that. And like even the second goal, granted it's good work from Athlone to break on the right hand side. That when Roisin Malloy gives it the outside of the foot to Emma Mooney, and Mooney then releases Kelly Brady, but Shells are caught where Brady's out and bit on the right and is able to cut back in because of the gap and the hole that's there. And like at that stage, I started thinking game is gonna ride away. It's gonna be sunset into the sunset for Athlone. I just think from a Shells viewpoint, and I know I've been critical of, even before I talk about the Shells goal, I know I've been critical of Owen Wirren. Sometimes I said he's made a couple of tactical decisions that I don't agree with this season. But if the man had no luck, if the man didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. You lose Alex Kavanagh due to a wrist injury that's going to roll out for the rest of the season again the week previous. Then Rowan McLaughlin goes down after 20 minutes, and you're starting centre midfields, considering they've already lost Kate Mooney through to the ACL. They've got other players who've departed, and it's just been one of them that's like whatever could go wrong has gone wrong and constantly gone wrong for Shells. But I thought they fought well until the end. Jan McQuinn obviously getting the header, and Pearl Slattery has two chances in injury time. Probably has to score one, if not both of them chances, and then we could be talking a completely different game. But for me, Athlone are just so resilient in the sense of, when they get that purple patch, they know what they're doing, and like it was a real first versus second game. And like I said to you at the weekend when we were chatting on Saturday, I said to you, when do you ever see in a game like this the goalkeeper get a man of the match in the first versus second game, where the top of the table goalkeeper got man of the match? Yeah. You don't see that very often. And that was, to me, I think Megan Plasko had a brilliant game. Like, you don't see that often. And I think Shells, listen, there's probably going to be a lot of work needed in Shells in the off season, but I think they can hold their hands up high and say, listen, they gave their all. But Athlone squad depth was just, at the end of the day, Athlone squad depth was just the difference. And I think, did they deserve it? Would a draw probably been a fair result? Maybe, but considering they took their chances when they come,
a draw.
Brady's just lethal.
A draw probably not even enough for Shells though, because a draw would it wouldn't be a 4-point gap, it'd just be a 1-point gap at the moment. But in reality, actually no, it'd be level. But Athlone would have that. No, sorry, I'm going nuts. It would be it would be a still they lose 2, they gain 1, so yeah, it'd be a 1-point gap. Sorry, my mind's completely gone. I can't add 1 and 3 anymore. But Athlone would still have the edge with a game in hand. So, and with the fixtures Athlone have, realistically, with all due respect to Cork and Sligo, they're 2 of their fixtures of the 3 remaining. The third one being a trip to Peamount, and Peamount have found form in the last couple of weeks.
6 out of the last 7.
Yeah, form that might see them actually finish in the top 5, which I think we would have disbelieved 6 weeks ago. So fair play to them. They had a big win down in Treaty at the weekend. They've signaled the end of Sean Russell's time in charge of Treaty, which I think is a bit of a disappointment because Treaty have been a different entity this year. We've seen them take a step forward in each of the last 3 seasons. First under Albon, then, to be fair, Dominic probably didn't hit all the notes he wanted, but he was pretty close. It was a decent performance from Treaty that year as well. And now we've seen a really, really improved version of them up to about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Treaty were one of my favorite teams in the league. Like, they've been really, really impressive to watch.
I would even say to you, the performance against Shells last week was capable of beating anybody in this league. Like, they've taken points off Athlone this year. They've taken points off Stoke. They've beaten Galway. Like, they've done so many different things this year. And like, the performance last week for me was unbelievable. Yes, granted, they didn't necessarily show up the way they're capable of doing in the cup semi-final against Bows. You sort of asked the question: is their season going to peter out? Like, I think at the weekend they were poor in terms of defensively. They were extremely poor. Some of the goals they conceded were you'd expect an under 19s or an under 17 side to sort of be a little more structured in terms of someone, like, especially in the first one, the way they should never go back to Sorcha Melia. You allow Side Doyle to run through your defence with balls over the top twice. The one with the Sorcha Melia second goal where she slips and still manages to get the ball back, and like, I definitely think there's probably that little bit of an edge of the season is over for them, especially having lost a week previous to Shells. But like, for me, with the way the situation and the conversation we were sort of having last week around the manager of the year, like, you're talking Sean Russell would have been a contender considering the way Colin Fortune had left and the way the situation is in Athlone now. You're talking probably Omer wouldn't win it. Albon Heist probably had to win a cup to win it. Like, and the other thing about the Sean Russell,
you're ruling so many out now. There's nobody left. Like, Phil Trill hasn't pushed on at Galway. To be fair, Wexford have been impressive, but haven't been really challenging either. So, like, who wins manager? Because the two people who are in the running for it have both left their roles. So, do you still?
Now the thing about it is, I will say this: according to Emma Duffy in the 42 this evening, John Russell did want to continue until the end of the season. He'd asked. They are saying he'd asked for clarity in terms of certain things, and it hadn't been coming. They said both himself and first team coach Craig Madigan have left. But the 42 are saying that he wanted to continue and see the season out, and it isn't to be the case, and he will be gone straight away. But like, the question is who is going to get it? And that's, I even had a text message off someone earlier on today asking the same question, and it's like, who do you give it to at this stage? If Albon Heist wins the cup, I think it's the obvious option, considering what's going on. I think, like, it's the merry-go-round of Women's League of Ireland managers. It's nearly starting to.
It started early this year. Like, normally the week or two after the season ends, it starts to kind of kick in, but it's happening 2 or 3 weeks before the season ends, which is absolutely nuts. And I get it from a club's point of view in terms of, if you know the manager that's there isn't, for whatever reason, isn't the person for you. There could be personality clashes, there could be a bit of power struggles or whatever it might be. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but that's kind of the norm reasons why managers are moved on when they're doing reasonably well. It just seems a little bit weird. But I think, and something we talked about off air before we came on the show, was the regional teams, the provincial teams have to have somebody from around the area. We look at where managers are traveling long distances to coach teams. We look at Tommy Hewitt in Sligo last year. It just never really worked for him. We looked at Albon, good first year, couldn't maintain the commitment to go up and down the road to Treaty. Same with, say, Sean Byrne at Wexford this year.
Dominic Foley's going as well the road, even though people think he probably local, but he's coming from Mallow and Cork to Treaty. Like,
it's not that far. It's genuinely not that far. It's maybe an hour. So it's doable. Like, getting across Dublin could be the same distance if you're heading for training in the Oscar Trainer, or you're heading for the training in the AUL and you're coming out from work, your day job or whatever on a
from where I am to Tala can be an hour and a half some days.
Exactly. So, like, that's not that bad. Like, an hour is fine. Anything over an hour, and definitely anything over 2, is just not really sustainable. We've seen players do it. We've seen the likes of Chloe Maloney's been doing it for Peamount for years. Others, Laurie Ryan, I think, was based in Athlone, so probably less so, but she was still playing intercounty football with Clare. So you have all of these situations where you've got players going huge lengths, and we've seen it for years. Like Heather Payne's a perfect example. Lived in Ballinasloe, was playing with Peamount back in the early days. Dervla Byrne.
Lisa Castley was another one.
Yeah, there's a bookload of girls' names. Sure, Wexford won the league title. Emma Hansbury and Ruth Fahy were in centre midfield for them. So both girls come from Galway and Sligo. So yeah, like it's not unusual. It's not sustainable long term, and it's definitely not something to build on a solid foundation. Treaty and whoever else is in that book, in a couple of weeks' time when they're looking at whether they have to replace managers for next year, you got to get somebody local, and you got to get someone who cares about women's football, because otherwise you're wasting your time. You need someone who's there for a commitment for a couple of years, there for women's football, knows a little bit at least about the game, doesn't necessarily have to have been directly involved in it, but needs to have a grow for it. Because if they don't have that little bit of a passion for it, you might as well not bother.
And my concern is, Breifne, I can just turn around to you and start naming names off on my hands here of managers that have managed Treaty year on year that have gone, and to me it's extremely concerning in the fact that the amount of manager changes that they've had. It's worse than a merry-go-round. It's nearly a case that that this time last year the same announcement, Dominic Foley's not going to remain. I don't think Sean Russell is going to be without opportunities in women's football. I don't think he is, and I think this might turn some clubs to sort of potentially look at, okay, I didn't think he was going to be available, to sort of like, okay, that's an option who we didn't think we had available but is available. And like, to me,
could very easily end up in Cork next year.
He could end up in so many different clubs. But the other side of it as well is it's the same thing that we said about even the likes of a challenge from, the under 20, some of the new under 23 clubs that be looking to get into the Premier Division will be looking at managers. There's so many different options that are there, and I think when you look at a good coach, I think he's done some good stuff. And the biggest thing that I would say about the way his Treaty side have gone about is when they've been on form, they've probably been one of the most enjoyable teams to watch play football, and that's the thing about it.
100%. I can't agree with you more. And I think what's more worrying for Treaty is not necessarily where their manager is going to end up next year. Where the players going to go, because this time of year in particular, we all know what happens. We all know players get tapped up, girls putting in calls to friends or players they might have played international football with, and a word gets out that certain players are being looked at by certain clubs, and this informal off the record conversations happening left, right, and centre. Let's be honest.
I remember a lot of them. Some of them are Treaty be still on amateur contracts, so they be, it's.
Yeah. But my point really belongs in the fact that you've got these players who have really shown what they're capable of, and there's definitely 5 or 6 players in Treaty who have shown they're capable of playing in a top half of the league team, and they might just be that little missing ingredient in Galway, at Shells, at Wexford, even at Bows. Where's Isabella Fulcini going to end up next year? Is her loyalty going to be to Ciara, who brought her into Treaty, or is it going to be towards like what's going to further her career next year? There's another 5 or 6 there.
She shouldn't be in our league next year.
Oh, I think I would agree with you. And now she's not the only one. I'm really impressed by their left full. Akeza has been excellent all season. Madison Robbins, Madeline Robbins is great. Madison McGuan has been excellent. Katie Lawley has been a revelation this year. She's really maturing into a fine player, and I think I'd be surprised if she's not playing in the league next year.
Another thing for you here, like we're looking at Treaty, we're talking. I still think Russell will be nominated for manager. I still think Russell has to be nominated for manager. If the club has said he's, he's. I still think he has to be. Yep. You're talking Bella Fulcini has to be in the nomination for Senior Player of the Year, and you're talking, if not one, potentially both of Lawley and McGuan. For Young Player of the Year, and you're talking. We've never sort of seen that from Treaty, where we're talking of that high of a sort of a stature. So for me, it's not a great look. We're seeing the other side of it as well is the cost of these players coming in. We're seeing it with the likes of Athlone, where Athlone have been mentioning financial audits and the cost of spending. The cost of spending in this league and to be competitive in this league is going to continue to rise. So, in order for clubs to be able to compete, they're going to have to have financials behind it. They're going to have structures in place, and you'd worry about clubs, especially the likes of your Treaty and Athlones, in the long term because of the simple fact that they don't get crowds in, especially the women's game. So they don't have a,
But
for
I
example, the
think
Shamrock.
I want to interrupt you there about money, because let's face it, for a club, we all know the reality, and maybe the listeners don't know the reality. We're aware of it, but if a girl is to come in and get a proper work permit to work in Ireland, she has to be getting paid a professional contract, and the PFAI rules and the government rules effectively mean that costs the club in the region of €40,000 to bring in one player. So if you want to bring in five, it's going to
unless
cost.
they're on unless they're on a graduate visa where you may get a
Now you're
year.
talking. Now you're talking. So we need to get better. And I say we, as the entire league and everybody involved in the league and the clubs in particular, need to get cleverer at recruiting these players out of third level in the States. And there's also that option of, if we can build, and clubs, again, I say we as in everybody, if clubs can build a proper scheme where we're bringing these girls in as part of their education, they might have done their undergrad in the States, played collegiate football, and you bring them over here to do a postgrad study or a PhD, or make it attractive to their lives, not just in a football context, you can get around the cost while still providing an exceptional benefit to the player. And I think that's where clubs need to be a bit more creative and a bit more forward thinking in terms of what mechanisms can we get in that aren't going to bankrupt the club, but also are going to benefit the player enough that it's worth their while up in sticks and moving to wherever it is. All of these clubs are within a short distance of a third level institution. It just takes a little bit of thinking outside the box to get these
Prime
players.
example is Ipandana. Come in from being from abroad. She come in. She went initially was with Cork doing studies, then went up to DLR and she was doing more studies in
I think she
UCD,
went
and
Galway for a year as well, wasn't she?
now she hasn't left.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Now she hasn't left, and it's part of the furniture, and that's the sort of thing. Like it's you have to have something in play, and I don't think just turn around saying money, money, money. For some clubs, it's an option.
It's
Where
not
if
an
they're
option
being
though, Aaron.
no, no,
Now,
what
I'm
I
going to
mean by
stop
that
you.
is when some clubs will be willing to spend more money because their men's team are successful. It's not a viable option going forward, because you can't be reliant on the men's team to provide in this, the men's team to give this, the men's team. Yes, they can give a certain amount, but you can't turn around and say, okay, X is spending this amount of money. Our men's team should contribute Y to help us close that gap, because it's not sustainable to turn around and say, let's always do that. And I think that's where you sort of look at clubs who are doing, if they can do it right. Then again, maybe it's a case that we see clubs potentially turning into the likes of what Shamrock Rovers have done in the men over time, where we know we're going to lose players abroad, but can we make sure that the clubs are getting something out of it? There's something in it for the clubs when they do lose them players.
There's a few things on that, and I'm glad you mentioned Shamrock Rovers, because I think that model in the women's game is unsustainable too, because at least in the men's game, you have that opportunity once in a blue moon, or now ideally 3 times in 2 seasons, which is phenomenal. We get an Irish club into that level of a group stage. So we're bringing in multiple million euro pockets and prizes every single year in terms of prize money. That's huge. You can sustain a club on that. You can create a foundation to build a club on that. Those financial rewards are not in the Champions League for the women, at least not within the realm that we can reach in the realistic future. And I think that's a problem for us. So there's no viable return on investment just for winning the league in the women's league. We need to be solid at the base. And by base, I mean academies, and having what you're talking about, an absolute conveyor belt of talent coming through, that even when inevitably 1 or 2 of them get picked off at the top every single season, you've got 4 or 5 girls just as good as them coming in at the other end into the first team. And I think that's what clubs need. Shells kind of have it. Galway have it to an extent. But we're not seeing, both seem to have it in spades in terms of the girls they brought through in the last 3 or 4 years. But we're seeing teams, like you mentioned to me off air, Peamount got beaten 6-0 by Cork City at the weekend. Like, that's not great from a Peamount point of view, who've always valued their academy performances. And I think I could be a little bit off here in saying this. I'm just going to have a quick little check, but I think Peamount's academy have done particularly poorly this year.
But like when you compare that to, say, Peamount's first team, as you said, we talked about being on a run of six wins and 7. Cork's struggling at the bottom of the table, and then you see a complete flip flop of that sort of thing. It's not something you would have expected. It's not something you would have expected to see in that sort of sense. And like the other side of it is, and I know you've sort of said to me off air about the like some of the results in terms of the score lines and stuff like that with these underage academies, and like the scoreline when you see teams being beaten out the gate, it's difficult as well to sort of encourage and motivate these younger players. Like I know there's a lot of talk now around the government requests for money for the academies, and as part of that there is talk of the League of Ireland women's having an under 15s league, and the women's side will have more funding in terms of if they get funding for the academies, there'll be more money there for the women's side of the academies as well. But like I think when we look at it, like, and when you look at the League of Ireland as a whole, and you look at the women's section, like the amount of players across the league, especially across the Dublin clubs in particular, even some who aren't in the Dublin clubs that have played for Shelbourne at one stage, come through Shelbourne. There was so many options, so many players across the league. I'd say you're probably talking easily into the 30, 40, 50 range that have played for Shells, or come through Shells. And like other clubs need to sort of to catch up on and maximise that. You're right, and you said the likes of Bowes bringing players through. Then you look at other clubs, and it's sort of the age profile can be at times a little bit higher, and these sort of things. And when clubs lose a lot of players, and all of a sudden they have to facilitate with younger players who maybe don't have experience or aren't fully ready, it makes a massive challenge for them. And I think we look at we look at Shells. I think Shells could face that challenge as well when it comes to that, with the fact of the amount of players that have left the club over the last 2 years, in terms of quality players. And I think as a whole, I think the league has to grow. And I'm going to bring this in now, and I know I mentioned on social media about Ireland manager Carla Ward. Like everybody talks about the League of Ireland being so important, being so front, being part of Irish football, and it is. But to me, the League of Ireland just gets left behind. Like I tweeted yesterday, Carla Ward was talking about Man United on Sky Sports, and talking about how some of the things that's happened over there, and I was like, but what about the League of Ireland? You talked about the League of Ireland when you come in. You talked about the good. You talked about how it can do. You talked about how you convinced Rusha that coming to the league was good. Rusha legged the first opportunity she got. Carla Ward hasn't been seen in the towards the League of Ireland in months. Hasn't even mentioned the League of Ireland. We're at a stage now where, to me, the League of Ireland goes one of two ways. We either say we don't really care about the women's football. Like, I'm not going to lie to you and turn around and say, like, even for the likes of me, it's so despondent. Lately, and we've had conversations about this. I've had other conversations about people. Like, I even don't know how much longer I have left with League of Ireland football. Like, it's just so.
Yeah, I think
frustrating.
For the benefit of the listeners, you had a big question mark over whether you come back and do anything this year in the League of Ireland. Yeah, you took a good 3 or 4 months off where you just didn't engage with the game, and then we had a chat maybe 2 weeks out from the season, and you said, "Do you know what? I've got a bit of a grow for it again," and maybe you need to do that every year, take that little bit of a break. But no, I do want to say before we go any further, apologies to Peamount. I just had a little quick look at the underage tables and the underage rankings. They actually were having a pretty good season. They were off the pace in the early exchanges, and I did notice that early on in the season, but actually they've pulled it back, and they've had some very impressive results in recent weeks. But that's, by their own standards, it hasn't been phenomenal, is all I'm saying, because they would have been one of the dominant sides in in those grades early on. In terms of the other games, I suppose we better talk a bit more about the football at the weekend. And in terms of the other games that were played, let's talk Wexford and Galway. Not a whole pile to talk about here, except for a late goal from Kylie Murphy, the veteran, sealed all 3 points for Galway. But should she have done so, Aaron? She looked very offside when that ball came across the top.
Not. Absolutely not. And that was sent to me, was it yesterday or late Saturday evening by somebody? I was just like, oh no. Because I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen the goal that side. As soon as I looked at it, even the first thing I said to you earlier is, have you seen this? I was like, to me, it's offside. Like, as soon as she, as you said to me, as soon as she turns and goes to engage,
yeah,
the flag has to go up there at that stage. And I don't know whether it was the official, because of the fact that the back pass is played, and I don't know what it was, but to me she's offside, and you can even hear in Ronan McCarthy's voice in the commentary. I don't think he's fully sure, because he says Phil Trill is like right on the sideline, so obviously the away bench is down that end in Ferry Carrick, and Phil has seen that, and like that could be the difference between Galway finishing fourth and Galway finishing third.
For the benefit of the listeners who may not have seen the highlights, go check it out. It's at the very end of it's like 90 plus 6 minutes into the game. Long ball over the top. Kylie Murphy is in a clear offside position, probably 4 or 5 yards offside. The ball goes over her head. She turns to run after it. The defender gets there first, which I suppose maybe by the letter of the law, you could argue that she didn't interfere with the original ball, but she obviously did. And she goes to get the ball. Defender gets there first. Short back pass back to the keeper. Murphy's in and slides it past the keeper into the back of the net. To me, it's offside all day, every day. But
it's a bit of cleverness in the sense of, the one thing I love about Kylie is she started to wait that split second before making the run as well. And I think that might have been, because when she stops and she initially comes to come back, I think that might have been what the referee sort of said, okay, is she interfering with that? But to me,
you've been very generous to her.
To me, it's offside. To me, it's offside all day long. Like, even in terms of this game, I think when you look back, when Phil Trill looks back at it, I know Kylie had a header effort that come off the post, but I think Phil Trill will look back at it and probably say they had enough chances in the first half to be 1 or 2 ahead, and probably then you're thinking, it's an easier game. But Wexford, there's just a little bit of something about them this year. Like, you look at the win against Peamount when they scored late on again against Peamount as well. They just have that little knack of getting that late goal, and I think it's a really, really big win for them. And like, if they could finish third, having won the All Ireland Cup, I think it's a really, really good season for them.
Yeah, 100%. Big year for them. And potentially, like we've talked about, we lost Adele Kennedy maybe 2 years ago, and Nicola Sinnott retired just ahead of this season. Obviously at the end of last season, but she was only announced at the start of this season. Kylie, it's touch and go as to whether she'll have another year or not. Only she'll make that call in the coming weeks, but it wouldn't be a surprise to anybody if she was to say, I'm packing it in. It's a good year to leave.
I think it might be done already. And the reason why I say that is because when you watch back to Lauren Dwyer's interview after they won the All Ireland Cup, she mentions Kylie, and then she says, oh, I don't think I should have said that. When she talks. So I think this might be the last one this might be the last hurrah for Kylie. But then again, like, she's one of them generational players. Your Anyas, your Kylies, your Pearls, them sort of players that have carried a ton of Noels, that have carried, helped carry this league over the years. And these sort of players, I don't think they'll probably get the full credit. Likewise with the Adele Kennedys, the Nicholas, and I don't think they'll probably get the full credit until they bow out. But we're at a stage where we're probably at a bit of a change in the guard, and I think this season you could see 4 or 5, or you could see up to 10, even though, depending on what players are thinking at this stage.
Yeah, we might be talking about one of them in just a couple of moments. Again, the penalty situation at the end of the Sligo Rovers game. Bows and Sligo Rovers, they did battle. These two have been bogey teams for each other over the years. Both teams have taken scalps in this particular clash. Dalymount Park, the venue for this particular game. Sligo weren't the better side, but probably could have got a draw out of this.
I was convinced they were getting their third draw of the season against Bows.
Yeah.
Especially later on. Like, they drew the opening day of the season, they drew in the All Ireland Cup. I was convinced it was happening again.
And they probably, you couldn't argue if they had got the point out of the game, because it was a decent enough performance from them. 2 decent goals. Bowes went ahead twice through Katie Malone, pegged back by Sligo twice, and then it was just a rash challenge in the box from Emma Hansbury, one of those veterans that we were maybe talking about in those lights in the coming months. And no mistake from the penalty spot, 3-2 for Bowes.
Yeah, like even when I look at the first goal in particular, for me, I'm sorry. The one thing I took away from it is it's a lovely ball from Ava Brennan, but I don't think Katie Malone should be scoring at the near post when she makes the run. It's a good finisher, and then I know she had a good game, but I think Bonnie McKiernan probably gets caught a little bit in the middle there for the second goal from Katie Malone when she goes around her. But I think for Bowes, there's two things that they'll probably take away from this game. Hopefully, Katie McCarron come through unscathed after coming on. She hadn't played since the semi-final of the Cup. That was her first game back after injury. She come on for the last, I think, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And Katie Malone scoring 3 goals in the last 2 games, considering the amount of football she has missed this year, just gives them that two more potential players to have available for that cup final in what, little under 3 weeks' time. I think for Bowes, I think it's a mammoth task, but I think they just need to keep everybody fit. In terms of Sligo, like you look at it, and the one thing I was thinking in terms of is like I thought it was a really nice finish from Paul McGrory for the second goal. I haven't mentioned the first goal on purpose from Sligo Rovers because I want to keep that for a second. I thought it was a nice finish from McGrory, but I do want to talk. We do need to sort of talk about Anna McDaniel's goal. Breifne,
Okay.
the touch. She's in the air. She takes the ball out of the air, and it's just.
And it's going away from her as well. It's coming over her head, and the left foot goes. I think it's the left foot goes up and just takes it down and controls it absolutely perfectly.
It was a lovely diagonal ball as well, and it's just like you don't. When we say these sort of things, we're not being critical of the player. You don't expect this from a young player like that. You do not expect it from them, and they just keep.
I'm not sure if you expect it from anybody in the women's league, and that's not again.
No.
I'm not sure you to get it from many players in the men's league, Aaron. I think your Jack Burns. I know he's not in the league at the moment, but your Graham Burks, yeah, fair enough. But maybe Joey and Doe back in the day, but I think you could probably count on your 2 hands how many players you would trust to do that in a match situation, in a tight game, in front of a decent crowd, relatively speaking. And for a youngster, top dollar for me.
Oh, it's just sublime, and like when you're watching, you're sort of thinking, "What have you done?" Yeah. And the thing about it, and do you know what the funny thing is, and I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, and every time a team scores a goal on that end, that's the end that Kate Thompson scored the goal. That's the end that Katie McCarron scored the goal. There's been some unbelievable goals that have been scored in that game, and like. The question I would say to you is that even the goal of the weekend? Because you're thinking, like, if you're looking at goal of the weekend, you're probably straight away.
Ruby Gallagher's effort.
Ruby Gallagher's
is pretty class.
Izzy Walsh's.
I like Izzy Walsh's, but I'm not sure I'd put it as goal of the week. Let's be honest.
Just because of the actual
phenomenal, but it was a great finish. Like, it was a fun goal. I'm not sure if it was a quality goal though.
Yeah, I think Gallagher's has to take it, but like we're talking, the McDaniel's touch is just unbelievable.
Although, did who hit the one for? Oh, I'm thinking out loud now.
Mia
Dodd's down in Waterford. Her second goal. First goal was decent. Second goal was better.
Yeah, second goal. Sorry, yeah. That was her first goal for Shamrock Rovers as well. But like that's the thing I like is when you can talk about goals and you're like, that was a great goal. That was a great goal. And you know what I mean? And it's like it's give the players a bit of credit because the players, like, there's some top quality finishers in this league. Like even when you look at, and we didn't sort of mention this at Shell's game, but we probably should have, in the fact that Kelly Brady now goes level with Mackenzie Anthony for the Golden Boot. Now, I would expect, considering the run in that Sligo Rovers that Athlone have with Cork, Sligo, and Peamount, I would probably expect it to finish ahead of Mackenzie Anthony. But this is another question for you that I would sort of ask, and I asked this question earlier, and I'll say it at this situation as well. The fact that Athlone, if they win the league on Wednesday evening with the game not on television, it sort of potentially frees up another spot as well for TG Carter on the opening day of at the last day of the season, because they potentially don't have to show the Athlone game the last day of the season with the league wrapped up. Does that mean the FAI potentially may give Athlone the trophy this weekend in Peamount for the fact that if they win,
I don't
because
think
it's
so.
on telly?
I think when you have the opportunity, I think you put the pressure on TG Carr to show the last game of the season. I think with the year Athlone have had, with the success Athlone have had, particularly on the European games of getting big numbers in the stadium, I think you need to get to that stage where we're going to do the trophy lift on the last day of the season at home against the Sligo Rovers side that'd be fancy to beat comfortably enough. I think it's a night for celebrations and to do it in front of the home fans and give them that opportunity to do it. I wouldn't be bringing it to Peamount myself, but you do want to probably rub it in with one of your rivals. It's always a bit nasty to have to host that kind of thing for somebody else. But I think Athlone would want to be at home. I know it'd be unlucky for Sligo to be the recipients, because we were both at Peamount Sligo game a couple of years ago when Peamount won the league last, and it's not nice to be the opposition when everyone knows it's a foregone conclusion that the thing has been lifted at the end of the game, win, lose or draw. So wouldn't like to be in Sligo shoes doing that again for the second time in 3 years maybe. But it would be, I think from Athlone's point of view, they're in Athlone, they can build a night around it, they can have a proper party. They're not traveling home an hour down the road where you get tired, you get whatever. Although the party on the bus home could be fun too. But I think if you want to really ingratiate the community into the club and really share that with them, they have sponsors that are capable of providing a venue for a party to celebrate winning the league, and I think that's what I'd be doing.
Just one thing,
whether Conor Fortune's there or not. That's all I would say.
Just one thing on this, and I said this to you off air. It's a little bit disappointing that both the FAI and TG Carr didn't have a backup plan, that if Athlone could potentially win the league on Wednesday evening, that the game was shown live on TV, because I think Athlone deserve that if they're going to win. Not to be disrespectful to Cork, but if Athlone win on Wednesday evening and win the league, you would have liked to see it be on TV, or that game being on TV, for that simple fact that if they can win the league, because I think it's important, especially with the way TG Carr have sort of done things this year. I think TG Carr like to do things as well in a good manner, like the fact that they've got the cup final, they've got a lot of women's football. We're grateful for everything that TG Carr do, but I just think if your potential champions elect are going to win the league, that game has to be on television.
I don't disagree with you, but I think I would settle for putting the Sligo game on, even though the jeopardy is gone from it. I think it would still be a good celebration of what has been a phenomenal season for Athlone. Of course, there were a couple of other games played over the weekend as well. Maybe let's chat about Waterford and Shamrock Rovers. I think is the last game that we have to talk about. Waterford changed their goalkeeper halfway through the game, about 20 minutes to go, to give the youngster who came on, Molly Livingston, I think was her name, an opportunity to play. It didn't really affect the performance. They were 5-1 down when she came on and ended up 8-1. I don't think much of that is down to her necessarily. I didn't think she had a bad game. I believe she gave away the penalty, which in my opinion was never a penalty. She comes out, she makes a really good stop. I'm sorry, I'm doing this out of order, but just because it's in my mind, she came out and she made a really good stop on the ground, stops the ball, forward gets taken out in the challenge, but the ball was saved before the forward came anywhere near her. And for me, I think for a girl making her debut, youngster coming into the team, very disappointing that was given against her.
Could the referee have potentially thought it was a bit reckless because she'd gone to dive to the right?
I played as a goalkeeper for years. There's nothing wrong with what she did. Nothing wrong.
We talked about this so much before we come on air, and sort of trying to understand that decision.
Yeah, we couldn't.
I don't understand. I don't actually understand the decision as though. But then again, I will say this to you: that's two decisions we've had in the RFC this year from different officials where we've been bewildered. The Cloud Fitzgerald one, and now this one, and both have been involved with goalkeepers.
Yeah.
let's talk about the game a bit.
Well, let's talk about the start of the game first. I
Yeah,
mentioned already, but Izzy Walsh, great effort. Ball comes in from across. She wins the header, and it literally just goes up in the air above the defender and past the defender, but only by about a meter. Defender hasn't quite gathered where the ball has ended up, but Izzy Walsh has followed the flight of it, and she hits it again with her head, and it kind of goes again like a little trampoline almost over the goalkeeper into the back of the net. Not the You're not going to be showing that to forwards going, this is how you header a
I
ball,
think
but a great
is
goal.
Summer Lawless call a little bit there. Does she think she's gonna come? Then she's not gonna come. It's one of them that it's.
I don't think you can
I don't
blame someone.
necessarily. Do you know what? I don't necessarily blame Lawless here, but it's one of these that it's nearly a bit of a freak goal in the sense of the fact that she heads it twice, and it's just because you never really see that.
Yeah, it's
But
different.
yeah, that's the best way to describe it. But it was gave Waterford a 1-0 lead.
And at
Where
that
did it
point,
all go?
I think it's probably fair to say you could see them holding on. They've played defensively set very solid in some fixtures this year, where when they get an early goal, they're very, very hard to break down at times. Unfortunately, that wasn't quite how it panned out for them. 2 goals from Mia Dodd. We talked about the second one in particular. First one was a great strike in off the far post. The second one was phenomenal. But I think that was about the fourth or fifth goal of the night. Anya O'Gorman with 2. One was a rebound from that penalty, which, to be fair to young Levingston, she did actually save the penalty. But if Anya O'Gorman's on the rebound, you're kind of snookered anyway. But 2 goals from sub Emily Corbett as well. Katie O'Reilly on the score sheet, as well as one from Jamie Thompson. 8-1 in the end. Anything in
15,
particular?
15-2 on aggregate over the 2 games
Yeah.
for Stephanie Zamber against Waterford. It's the only real time that we've probably seen, apart from when Shell's put a couple past it, we've really seen Waterford beaten out the gate. I just like that no more than what we talked about last week with Treaty. The season is over. When you've got a big game like this, it can be difficult as well to sort of get through when you've had a difficult year. Granted, they've had a good first year. I think the report card I don't think it'll be all negative for Waterford this year. The
No.
first report card.
I think if you take those 2 Shamrock Rover games and Rovers games out of the equation, and they were anomalies slightly in their season, I'm looking at their goal difference here. It's minus 45. That immediately brings it to minus 32, which is same as Cork City, one more than DLR in the red, and better than Sligo Rovers by 5 goals. So in the real terms, overall, on average, their season has been really, really good, really solid for a brand new team into the league. They're not bottom of the league, albeit Cork City do have 3 opportunities to get more points than them this year. They're a point clear of Cork. A win in one of their last 2 games would see them eclipse Sligo Rovers if they fail to pick up any points. So,
And the other
and
question
Waterford,
is, can you see Cork City getting anything out of Athlone, Shamrock Rovers, and Wexford?
not on paper, no, I can't. But I could see Waterford getting a result at Treaty on the last day of the season. So, anything's beyond the realm of possibility at this stage, So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Waterford could, if they were to get a result in that game and things don't go right for Sligo in the like they are 8 goals better off than them, but 3 points ahead of them on the league table. Waterford could, in theory, catch Sligo or pass Sligo. I think what's probably more realistic though is that Waterford might draw with Treaty and just finish in a comfortable 11th place with Cork in bottom of the table. But again, we've seen all these teams take points when you didn't really expect them to. So you never really know. Our record and predictions.
Yeah, very, 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 very true on predictions. So I won't predict anything for the last couple of weeks.
Let's take a quick look at the league table just before we go any further. I'm just going to bring it up here. If I can remember how to do it. So this is the league table for the season ahead. Athlone top of the table, 4 points clear with that game in hand. They play Cork on Wednesday night. A win would
In
put
terms
them.
of Athlone, since they had that spell pre-Champions League where they drew, was it 3 league games on the bounce or 2? It was they drew three league games on the bounce. They've won 6 league games since drawing with Galway, Treaty, and Bohs in and around Europe. They've won 6 league games in a row. So like they've really, really bounced back from that initial blip where everybody thought, okay. And you think about it, in that 6 games that they've won in that spell, they've beaten Shelbourne twice. They've beaten Shamrock Rovers. So like it's not as if they've had to Will it be? And it's not as if they've had easy fixtures, and they include the 2 FAI Cup games. That's 8 wins in a row domestically
But
since them
there
3
are no.
draws.
I would argue there are no easy games in the
No,
league
not
anymore.
anymore.
Let's go back to the league table for a second. Shells 4 points behind. Galway United 1 point back. Wexford a further point back before a little gap opens up to Bows, and a cluster of 4 teams there on 33, 32, 32, and 31. Peamount, Treaty, and Shamrock Rovers just chasing those for fifth
Am I getting
place.
my prediction right?
You might. We'll wait for another few weeks to see. For the benefit of those who didn't catch the first episode of the season, Aaron did say Shamrock Rovers would finish 7th, and I told him he was crazy. It looks like he may have been more accurate than I gave him credit for at the start of the year. DLR Waves, they topped that bottom tier within the group, 15 points, 3 clear of Sligo Rovers, who themselves 3 clear of Waterford, as we mentioned, and Cork 1 point further back on the league. It looks like that will be more or less how they finish if the games go to expectations over the last 2 weeks. I can't see too many different changes. Wexford could leapfrog Galway is one possible, and then that middle tier, who knows what's going to happen there. It really boils down to who's going to get the wins. Can't see Treaty improving their position given their run in. Shamrock Rovers may. In theory, any of those teams could finish 5th to 8th of those 4 teams.
Yeah, I'd say I'd expect Rovers have got Cork City. Expect to get a win against Cork City.
And then Shells at home.
That Shells game could really be a real.
Shells might have nothing
Don't,
to play for.
don't want to say a real nothing game or real.
Shells won't want to lose to Shamrock Rovers. It's happened too often already.
It's interesting. I'm gonna give you a stat.
Well, I'm guessing it's one you've repeated 15 million times on the show. Shamrock Rovers have never lost to Shells.
Shamrock Rovers have never beaten Shelbourne. Shelbourne have never beaten Shamrock Rovers in Tolka Park. Shamrock Rovers have never beaten Shelbourne in Tallaght Stadium.
Interesting. Okay. So you want to be away in all of these fixtures, is what you're saying. Cork, they faced games against Shamrock Rovers and Wexford. It's going to be hard to see them pick up points there.
Wait, actually, I might be wrong. I think Shamrock Rovers might have one winning actually against Shells.
Okay. Sligo host DLR. A 3-0 win for them would actually put them ahead. No, a 4-0 win against DLR would put them ahead of DLR going into the last round of games. DLR face Galway, and Sligo Rovers are away to Athlone Town. So they probably have to do that, take care of business this weekend if that is going to be a thing. Aaron, the games this week, we have Cork City versus Athlone. In one word, will Athlone win the league on Wednesday night?
Yes.
Sound. On Saturday afternoon, that's all we need to talk about that one. Like, it's top versus bottom. It really should be fairly obvious.
I do want to talk about Sligo Rovers against LOIWomen and I want to talk about it for a different reason. I had made you aware of this previously. Laura Heffernan was officially announced as joining Tanya Oxby's Northern Ireland squad on a camp by camp basis ahead of the upcoming Nations League playoffs. What I am told is it won't impact the other waves. It's more of a, because it's an international break, it's more about that. I think it's another good opportunity for a female coach in Ireland to have a bit more exposure. Like we talked about last week about the pro license with Chelsea Newman being assistant head coach at Birmingham. Obviously, Mary Horahan is coaching, and so like coaches, it's good to see more female coaches, especially getting an opportunity. But I think we're going to see a lot more of them as this probably as this next generation sort of winds down. Especially, I think, and you'd expect the likes of Anya to stay involved in the game. Probably expect the likes of Rachel, Graham, Pearl Slattery when they decide to step away to stay involved in the game. So there's a lot of potential that we're gonna have a lot more female coaches joining the ranks over the next couple of years. But in terms of this game, do you really want me to predict it? Because I can't. The last time I predicted, I think DLR, and then last time I predicted Sligo, DLR beat them. I actually don't know how this is going to go. I think this is going to be a case of if DLR Waves show up, they should beat them. But Sligo are fully capable of getting all 3 points in this game as well at the same time.
I sneakily think Sligo are going to edge this just because the home situation. It's kind of a dead rubber. You're playing for pride, really. I know Sligo can leapfrog DLR if they win the game, but I think for me it's going to be a case of the youngsters in Sligo just trying to prove a point.
Waves won the Wales won the game in the FAI Cup game in Sligo.
Okay.
And Sligo won the league game in the Carlisle grounds. So they won all this year.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's
No, DLR won the
it's
game. DLR won the game in the Carlisle grounds.
that Sligo won. They're not
So
even
DLR
Sligo
won
not beat.
both of them. DLR won both of them this year.
I thought Sligo beat them one
Yep.
of them.
No, 1-0 in unless my information is wrong, which is not
No,
beyond me.
you're spot on.
But
I
yeah,
thought
it'd be
they
interesting to
were.
see. I'm going to back Sligo. My head is saying Sligo. My heart is saying Sligo. But my head is probably saying DLR. Treaty Bows repeated the cup semi-final.
There's only one winner, right? There's only one winner right now. Manager and first team coach leaving. There's only one winner.
Okay.
Away win.
Away win. Shells and Wexford. This is probably the tie of the weekend, really.
Is it? Unless I think Athlone and Peamount, Athlone and Peamount, two banging form teams.
But if Athlone have won the league on Wednesday night, they're going to be in party mode.
Yeah, this is a massive game for Wexford. I don't think Galway are going to drop points in either of the last two games. So I think Wexford maybe reside the fourth place, even if they win their last two games. But considering they got absolutely beaten out the door in Ferrycarrig Park when they played Shells, I think they'll want to sort of have that sort of performance. And I think Wexford are a better team now. With Shell's injuries, Ron McLaughlin, I can't imagine will play, considering she come off after 23 minutes against Athlone. I think if Athlone do win the league on Wednesday, even as we suspect, I wouldn't be surprised if Shells make changes in this game and give some players an opportunity over the next two games.
Yeah, I would. We saw it last year under Owen as well, where they brought a lot of girls in towards the end of last season who've been integral to their squad this year. So I'd expect
the only I will say to you is, while they are technically 6 points ahead of Galway, they do have a massive goal difference. So I can't think, even if they were to somehow make changes and lose the last two games, they're not going to be caught for second place anyway.
It'd need to be 10-0 defeats or at least 5-0 defeats would go with 5-0 victories, both of them, which isn't going to happen. Anything else we haven't touched on this week, because I am conscious we're going to get out before the hour this week, Aaron.
Just in terms of the weekend, obviously, just the last game. Did we mention the Galway game?
No. Well, we did, but we didn't mention it properly. Galway,
and they're also offering free admission, I think, for family and friends. I think Galway are hosting this weekend. I've seen that on social media earlier. Check out Galway's socials. Yeah, before we do finish, I ranted about Carl Award. I'm not going to go there anymore. Eileen Gleeson didn't go to the Oireachtas committee. Good to see, and good to see the FAI, as much as their performance is being questioned, that they did actually show up to the Oireachtas committee meeting last week. Yeah, other than that, listen, I'm happy to have it less than an hour tonight.
Yeah, I think the FAI, the applications for the women's head of football role closed last Friday, so we'll be interested to see who has put their name in the hat and the quality that has come through, and hopefully there's some good candidates. Hopefully there's a good process and a really good candidate comes out of that, because I think, as I've said in the past on this show, I think the best person for that job was Eileen Gleeson. I think it's completely untenable now for her to be in any role within the FAI, having considered she's taken them to a legal action. That never ends well for the individual, unfortunately. And well, it might from a financial point of view, but it's not going to end well for her in terms of her career progression within Irish football.
I'd love to see Olivia O'Toole being prominent in the future of Irish football in terms of some way. I think the FAI needs someone they need people with a right vision for women's football going forward. And I think it's at a stage now where they're at such a crossover that they either do things, they either get things right this time, because it can't be having another head of women's football in 18 months.
Oh, no, that's the absolute last resort for any situation. That's it from us this week. Wherever you're going to a game at the weekend, do keep an eye out, and hope we see as many good goals as we saw last weekend. We'll be back next week with another look. We might be back later in the week if Athlone do the job over the weekend. We might have a look at doing another show between that game and the next round of games, just to celebrate Athlone's victory. That's it from us this week, though. We will be back next week. Talk to you then.